So, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me with this okay? All right. Well, first of all, let me just say how honored I am to be here today with all of you. I have to say, anytime I have an opportunity to interact with people like yourselves, it'll be the highlight of my month, maybe the highlight of the past 6 months. So trust me when I say I'm really excited to be here. So I want to start with you raising your hands if you are from the great state of Indiana. How many of you? Wonderful. So roughly, I don't know, at least half it looks like. How many of you were raised on a farm or a farm community in Indiana? Raise your hand. Good. So there's a fair number of you. So let me admit right up front, I was born and raised on a farm in Iowa, and I want you to know that I am not an Iowa Hawkeyes fan, so you can't hold that against me, especially after the game last week. But what I want to try and do today is show you how somebody from a farm in Iowa was able to build a career in the tourism industry. And I want you to recognize the kind of life experiences that you can have by opening your mind, being open to change, and considering tourism as part of your career path. So again, raise your hands if tourism is part of what you're considering for your future career. Hands up. Fantastic. So I'm going to, I have to apologize too. I don't like standing behind podiums and things, but I don't have a clicker here, so I'm going to have to do that from back here. So I've lived for the last 20 years in New York City, and there's a show on Broadway right now called The Book of Mormon. Anyone seen it? It's hilarious, right? And I would strongly encourage you, if you have an opportunity to see it, to take advantage of it. So today I decided to share with you the Book of Terry. And chapter 1 is all about the Iowa farm, being open to change and opportunities. Then we're going to go to chapter 2, and that's all about the art of politics, the board and buddy. And I'll explain more of this later. Chapter 3, I'm calling Crisis Preparedness in New York City. Chapter 4 is about Cruise Lines International Association. And there I'm going to focus on congressional theater, from victims to pirates. And then we're going to end up with chapter 5, which is with USTOA, which I call the perfect balance. So let's go into the Iowa farm, which, by the way, that's my farm in Iowa. I'm going to be there tomorrow night. I need a farm fix at least 3 or 4 times a year. I feel living in New York City, which I love, I live in a bubble. And as soon as I get to that farm, I'm grounded. And I think that's what family does in general, but I think it's very important to maintain that close connection. So I started at a very small liberal arts college, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, called Coe College, got a triple concentration in economics, political science, and American studies. What does that get you? I don't know, but it certainly opened doors for me. I did an internship with the Cedar Rapids, Iowa Convention and Visitors Bureau, where I spent the better part of a semester licking stamps and putting on envelopes. But I was a sponge. I absorbed absolutely everything I could from the people who worked there. And what I learned, my gosh, tourism is really economic development. It's about job generation and creation. It's about generating tax revenues. Tax revenues then that go to support the infrastructure, that go to support education. And it's really economic development. And many times that connection isn't clearly or distinctly made with the tourism industry. So I absolutely loved it. I was fortunate after graduating from Coe College to being hired as the executive director of the Davenport, Iowa Convention and Visitors Bureau. Now, who knew they had a convention bureau? I was an office of one, but for a year I did everything I could to promote, market, and position Davenport as a destination. But I always fantasized about being in New England. For some reason, I like history, I like water, you mix the two, and for me anyway, it pointed me to New England. So how do I get there? I learned while attending a conference that they were looking for a president of the Providence, Rhode Island Convention and Visitors Bureau. And in my mind, I saw, white steepled churches and some kind of historic buildings, and this is Providence. So they took a huge chance on somebody right out of college with really a limited portfolio, but for whatever reason they believed in me. They moved me from Davenport, Iowa to Providence, and I ended up spending a decade there. I thought I'd go and spend 2 to 3 years, but it turned into a decade. And I want to focus on a couple of things here. I talked about the board, which is my board of directors, and Buddy Cianci is the mayor. So I was 23 from the farm in Iowa, living my dream in New England, and yet I didn't realize that politics touches absolutely everything. So as you sit there, I don't care whether you go into hospitality and you're going to work for a major brand, whether it's a Marriott, a Hyatt, a Hilton. Politics exist in all environments, and you need to be aware of that, and you need to have your radar and your antennas up because it can impact your career and opportunities that are extended to you. So let me tell you my wake-up call. In my first year in Providence, I get a call from the mayor. His name is Buddy. He's twice, is anybody from Rhode Island, by the way? Okay, love Rhode Island, by the way. But, so he's been a convicted felon twice, and yet gets out of jail, gets reelected. Interestingly, he's running for a third time this fall to be mayor again. Very charismatic, and people love him. But he's got a dark side to him. I get a call from him on Thanksgiving night, and he says, Terry, you need to know who your boss is. And I said, well, you know, Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, I have a board of directors, and it's the hotel community, the restaurant community, it's the museums, the attractions, and that's who I report to. The mayor quickly corrected me and said, no, Terry, your board and who you report to is my dog Spot, it's my daughter Cindy, it's my girlfriend Michelle. So I was smart enough at that point to say, oh, you know what, just shut up, Terry, don't say anything else. Just listen and learn. So at the end of the conversation, he said, and by the way, you should be aware that I have a pair of cement shoes in your size ready for you to wear. So at age 23, being told that I could be potentially floating in the Providence River was one of those life lessons. And I don't share this to instill fear. I just want you to be aware that I had no idea the level of politics that could exist within a destination marketing organization. It's usually not that extreme, but politics is very dynamic. So you just need to be sensitive to it, as well as if you go within hospitality, there's going to be politics within a corporate culture as well. The one other story from Providence I want to share with you was with my board of directors. We were wanting to build a convention center for Rhode Island, which never had one. But in order for the bottom line to work, the economic impact study said you had to have a hotel developed simultaneously with that convention center. At that particular point in Rhode Island's history, there weren't developers out there willing to invest in a new hotel. So the state of Rhode Island had to consider actually funding and build that hotel with the convention center in order to make it work. The chairman of my board at that moment was actually the owner of the Marriott Hotel in downtown Providence. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, he didn't want the state to be his competitor by owning a new hotel. So that set up a dynamic where I had to take a position opposite of what the chairman of the board wanted from his perspective. But I can tell you today that Arthur Robbins is still my #1 mentor. We've stayed in touch for 20-some years, and we were able to work it out because we had very open, honest communication. And that's the second story from my Rhode Island tenure, is that there are going to be times when you have to take a position that are contrary to somebody that you may either report to or that you hold in high esteem. But if you can sit across the table and respect each other and the position that you're, I hate to say the word adversary, but respect that other person across the table, it will take you far and you can maintain a very healthy relationship. Much to my demise, we don't see that happening in Washington, D.C. today. There's no respect, there's no trust, and as a result, that's why we don't see a lot coming out legislatively from our nation's capital. So anyway, the art of politics in Rhode Island, I learned a tremendous amount from. But after a decade, I decided it was time for me to move on. And I decided that even though I'd never had a love affair with New York City, I knew that I wanted to see if at least I could survive there. I didn't want to wake up someday in a retirement community back on the farm in Iowa and say, gosh, could I have done it? So I actually went to New York City without a job and without knowing a single person. But I had a skill set that I trusted, maybe a little too much confidence, but I went down there and started networking to find my next chapter. And the message from that story that I want you to carry with you is calculated risk-taking. I think you need to be a risk-taker today, calculated, again, in order to create opportunities for yourself. Don't expect the opportunity to search you out. That if you have a desire or an instinct that you would like to experience Paris, and at that point or at that moment in your career, you don't have a family, your only responsibility is to provide for yourself, then I would say do a lot of research and get on the next plane to Paris. Or it could be Beijing or wherever you're thinking of going, because opportunities can be few and far between, but you need to take control and you need to go to that opportunity, create something for yourself, because I think the best life experiences can come from that. And I was very fortunate when I was in New York City to eventually run the New York City Convention and Visitors Bureau, which is called NYC & Company. And it was an extraordinary opportunity to talk and market what I consider to be the greatest city in the world. Unfortunately, September 11th happened. So I learned the value of being prepared for a crisis situation. And of course, we all are told by all experts that you've got to have a crisis plan in place. We had a crisis plan in place. And I can tell you, after about 2 hours after the second tower had collapsed, we look at the crisis plan, we fold it back up, and put it back on the credenza, because unfortunately, nothing could have prepared us for what we were going through as a city, as a country, and as a global community. So, a couple of lessons about crisis preparedness. First, you take care of the immediate circle of your staff and their families. Make sure they're safe and secure. Second, you have to take a look at your extended family, which is the travel industry. We had people walking from lower Manhattan, the tip of Manhattan, up the West Side Highway, up 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue, who were either living down there or staying in hotels down there. They lost their identity, whether it was a passport, a driver's license, they lost their glasses. They lost everything in a matter of minutes. So they are coming up towards Midtown, where our office was headquartered. I immediately send our staff to all the area hotels to determine where can we put these members of our family, because they were members of our family at that moment in time. So we got cots into all the hotel ballrooms so that they at least had a dry, safe place to sleep. We immediately started the restaurant industry producing hot meals and sending to the hotels. So what I learned, as tragic as it was our industry that was the initial caretaker of all the people who suffered from September 11th. Yes, the Salvation Army comes in. Yes, the federal government comes in. But it still takes 24 hours, 48 hours. It was the hospitality industry that was the caretaker through this horrific crisis. So again, the lesson learned is we take care of those who are part of our extended family, and we should be prepared in the future, because regrettably this will happen again, hopefully not to this extent, but we have to understand what our role is as an industry when a crisis like this happens. So from that then, I get a call from a headhunter with Cruise Lines International Association saying that they're looking for a CEO of CLIA. How many of you have been on a cruise? Raise your hand. Looks like quite a few of you. So I said to the executive recruiter, I said, you know, this will be the shortest call of your day, because I've never been on a cruise and I have no desire to go on a cruise. And he said, you might be the perfect person for this job. What I learned, and also I would strongly encourage you to learn early on, is you never close a door. So even though I told him I'm not the right person, I still kept the door open. I said, look, if you'd like to explore this a little further, we can talk again, you know, in the future, whatever. So as luck would have it, they made a believer out of me as far as the kind of dynamic growth that this industry was going to experience, the diversity of product that is out there, and that I should lead them. So I took the job, again, headquartered in Manhattan, and started down this path with the cruise industry. So if you recall, this chapter I was focusing on victims and pirates because I started the job obviously thinking and believing that we are providing extraordinary experiences out at sea and at ports of call around the world, which we are, and they do it extraordinarily well. But my job really became being the face and voice for an industry which was under tremendous scrutiny. Never did I think back in Iowa that someday I would testify in front of Congress 6 times. Never did I think I would have to wage a battle against pirates who attack a ship off the Somali coast. So that's part of the story for you to take from this, is that in the tourism industry, you are going to be exposed to the things that right here today we can't even imagine. You know, we can't imagine what might happen. And while some of these are extremely challenging, I can tell you I'm a better person and I am more prepared for future chapters in my career. So let me touch base on victims. As I'm sure you're aware, because it's in the press a lot, you know, there are people who go overboard. There are people who regrettably are sexually assaulted. And as we provide context around the cruise industry, you know, these are floating cities. When you have vessels that can accommodate, you know, over 5,000 passengers and an equal number of crew, this is a community 10 times bigger than my farm community in Iowa. So when you have that number of people in a confined area, things will happen, regrettably. Our job is to make sure that we provide the appropriate care to a victim and make sure who the assailant is taken through the judicial process and given the appropriate punishment. I was taken then to Congress 6 times to testify about the safety and security on behalf of the industry. And the lesson learned from that experience was it's not about fact-finding. You know, many times our congressional leaders today, I think you probably saw in the news where there's a hearing about how did somebody jump over the gate in front of the White House, enter into the East Room of the White House. How does that happen? So we think that it's fact-finding. The reality is, regrettably, it's really about which of our elected officials can get the soundbite that appears that night on CNN or on Fox. I can tell you that when I was testifying, half of the panel they had already issued press releases about their position towards the cruise industry before they even had a chance to hear from us. So they've already thought these through 9 times out of 10, but it doesn't mean that we don't have a responsibility to appear, respond to their questions, and be open to how can we do a better job to provide a safe, secure travel experience. So after almost 8 years, I felt as if, even though I'm supposed to be providing these extraordinary cruise vacations for people, that my particular job was waking up and deflecting the current issue, whether it was pirates who had attacked or whether there was a ship that had lost power and people were floating for hours or days out at sea without appropriate power. So I decided, you know what, it's time for me to make a move. I had the opportunity then to go to the United States Tour Operators Association, which is where I've called home now for the last 3.5 years. And I call it kind of the perfect balance, because this particular industry doesn't have the kind of crisis situations that the cruise industry has. However, we do have other types of issues that we'll talk about here shortly. So let me just give you a synopsis of USTOA. Today we're 42 years old. We have 53 corporate members, and those corporate members own and operate roughly 175 different brands. What's important to know about USTOA is that we don't want to be the largest travel association. We only want to identify and associate with the very best in the industry so that the customer gets the very best travel experience that can be had out there. Now, in addition, we have what we call our $1 million Traveler's Assistance Program. And this is a way in which we differentiate ourselves from any other travel association today. So every one of those 53 corporate members has to post a $1 million bond that I hold at our office. And why do we do that? Because if for some reason that business should cease operations, we want to have this as a resource to consumers to come and collect a deposit that maybe they had on hold with that particular company. So it's a way to say to consumers that we hold our members to the highest standards, and we're going to be there for you if for some reason that company should cease operations. Now, as we all know, this day and age, $1 million for a large corporation is a drop in the bucket. But if you're a small to medium-sized business, that's a high hurdle if you have to tie up $1 million in capital that you can't use towards product development, or maybe it's securing a building for office expansion, so on and so forth. So this program is how we differentiate our members from others out there in the rest of the world. In addition, we have associate members, and these are our supplier partners, of which we have roughly 650. So these are the airlines, the hotels, the ground operators from around the world. And I've broken down for you where they are geographically spread across the world. So obviously North America, 190, Europe is up there with 171, Asia's not far behind with 134, and then others sprinkled throughout the rest of the world. I can tell you that that number may grow next year by only 10. Again, we're not focused on vast expansion. We're focused on identifying globally those companies that are credible and share our commitment to integrity. I can tell you that we're going to be more strategic in how we develop. For the last 5 years, no, I'm sorry, for the last 2 years, our members have said Myanmar is the #1 emerging destination. Yet as we look at this map, I only have actually one company that's a member of ours in Myanmar. So that then becomes a focus for us. If we believe there's potential in Myanmar, then we need to identify those businesses that we can start building a partnership with. So instead of expanding Turkey, where we have 23 roughly ground operators, we're in good shape in Turkey. We need to just we can't say cap the membership in Turkey legally, but we aren't going to proactively look for more business in Turkey. Myanmar, yes. Vietnam, yes. So we're going to create a more balanced global membership over the next 5 years. It's not about numbers, it's about finding the right fit for who we want to partner with. 2 years ago, we hired PricewaterhouseCoopers to do our first economic impact study. I'm going to share with you some highlights of our industry today, but I'm going to tell you right now that we're just wrapping up our second study. So all of this information will be dated in about 48 hours. I can tell you that we're going to have fairly strong growth over the past 2 years, but let me just share with you where we were in 2012. So we were, or are, an $11 billion industry. We service roughly 6.5 million travelers. These US travelers, for the most part, go internationally. So they go from a US home to every corner of the world. Our members purchase $8 billion in goods and services. We generate over 14 million room nights globally, fill over 4 million airline seats every year. So that's us economically as a snapshot. Let me just give you where we ended 2013 and what we're looking at for 2014. So 89% of our members had an increase in business in 2013. 2/3 said that that business increased by 10% or more, which was much stronger than we anticipated as we started 2013. We were cautiously optimistic that it would be certainly a year of growth, but we thought it would range somewhere between 4% and 6%. So to end 2013 with double-digit growth was great news. 9 out of 10 reported an increase in passenger numbers, and again, 60% said those numbers grew 10% or more. So 2013, a great year. As we look at 2014, again, our members, 93% said that they anticipate growth, and 2/3 said that they were forecasting a boom year, which we call, again, double-digit growth. I can tell you anecdotally, the first quarter of this year was extraordinary. I was hearing from our members, strongest sales, most revenue ever generated in one day, those types of stories I was hearing. Second and third quarter, things started to soften, and I can't tell you exactly why, because we're still trying to get our arms around it. So when we get the PricewaterhouseCoopers study, I think I'll have more insight on that. But I do believe that as you look over the past 6 months and what impacts our members going globally, just in the last few weeks, we see Ebola outbreaks. We see the war in Israel. We see the Ukraine situation. We still see Cairo and Egypt soft. So every day, our members wake up and we deal with geopolitical issues. We deal with Mother Nature, who's flexing her muscle, and all of a sudden there's a hurricane in Mexico somewhere, and we've got customers there. How do we make sure that they're safe, secure, and how do we get them home immediately? So all of these global issues are part of this dynamic industry, and I think that's the future. You know, we have to be prepared to manage any type of situation that can be thrown at us. So as I talked earlier about September 11th, there will be issues and crises like that in the future. We've got to be prepared. We've got to be prepared when an Arab Spring takes place. And let's look at what's going on in Hong Kong right now. And you know, while it's very peaceful, we have members with customers there. So tomorrow's a day off in Hong Kong. They're anticipating tens of thousands of people to still, you know, protest in the streets. What does that do for our customers who may be scheduled to go to a particular museum or an institution? So it's a dynamic, ever-changing kind of industry that I could only hope and encourage you to consider when you look at opportunities in the future. So let's carry on here. I want to end here with one of the things that I'm charged with trying to do is to position our member experiences in an innovative and fresh way. In our name, United States Tour Operators Association, that T word can many times be a nasty word because from an old perspective, it can sound like bus prison. I'm going to be stuck on a bus with 40 strangers for a week, and that sounds like hell. The reality is the product has evolved and changed so much that it's not about the motor coach. It's about river cruising. It's about luxury rail experiences. It's about hot air ballooning. So somehow as a trade association, we have to figure out how do we talk about the diversity of our experiences in a very kind of fresh and innovative way. So I don't know, have any of you heard of Matt Harding? He's this guy from Seattle. Let me just share some statistics about Matt. He's the guy in the center there. So Matt has had over 100 million views on YouTube. On YouTube, there are these silos, and obviously one of the silos is travel. Matt's had the most views in the travel silo in all of YouTube. He's created these videos where he has gone to every corner of the world, and he does this stupid dance. And the way they kind of caught this is when he was in college, him and some fraternity friends were somewhere in Italy, and the fraternity friend said, you know what, go over next to that fountain and do that stupid dance that you do at our fraternity parties. So he goes over, he does this stupid dance, he tapes it, and then without Matt knowing it, they get back home, and he just posted on YouTube. And all of a sudden, he calls Matt and says, you know, 50,000 people have watched you do your stupid dance. So they kind of put two and two together and decide, let's do the stupid dance all across the world. And what it actually started to capture was the freedom to travel, a celebration of diverse cultures and the people who call that place home. And all of a sudden, he's created this phenomenon of 100 million views. So I want Matt as a partner. So I reach out to Matt, strike a deal, and we send him to 9 countries to do his dance with our members, to demonstrate those values that our members deliver every single day of the year. So we created this 1-minute video that plays prior to any time a consumer goes to see a typical Matt video. And with a little luck, this might run. If not, we'll wait and see what happens. So what I think we accomplished is that we kept this, even though it's an ad, and I hate calling it an ad, we kept it very true to the spirit of Matt. So the only thing that we changed, if you haven't seen his videos, they're exactly that format, but we put at the bottom of it the name of our member who he was traveling with. And then we had a microsite that supported it. So anytime a consumer was watching it, they could click and say, okay, I want to know more about the Northern Territories of Australia's outback, and which USTOA members have product that can take me there, and how can I buy that experience. For a small trade association like ours, we can't afford huge advertising budgets, so you're not going to see us on the Today Show like you'll see Carnival or Royal Caribbean. But with the beauty of social media, we can create something like this. It lives forever on YouTube and allows us to start telling our story about the diverse destinations that we go to around the world and the kind of wonderful cultural experiences that you're going to have there. So this year we have done another campaign. We will be going to 7 countries with a young millennial who's creating videos for us, because I'm a firm believer that the consumer today is more inspired by the visual and the video than they are by more and more print. So that's just an example of how we're trying to tell our story in kind of a different way and a cost-effective way for us. And so let me just wrap up here to say, you know, the book of Terry, I don't know what the next chapter is, but I have been so, I don't know how to say, humbled by the opportunities that I have gotten. And I would strongly encourage you, be open to change, consider calculated risk-taking, and look at opportunities that you may not have considered, because it will provide you life experiences that you could never have. So thank you very much. So I think we have about 10 minutes. If you've got any questions, I will attempt to answer them, and I will also tell you if I don't have the answer. And if there are no questions, that's even better. No, yes? So the question is, what does being in USTOA do for a company? And one of the faculty members asked me that this morning. So highest priority for our members has been advocacy. Right now, nothing's happening legislatively, but regulatory bodies like DOT are being very hyperactive. We are stronger together as an industry than you are on your own. And let me give you an example. So President Obama recently loosened up the people-to-people license for Cuba. So I'm sure you're aware that Cuba is the only place in the world where you as a consumer just can't go and buy a ticket to go spend a weekend in Havana. You have to go through a tour operator who has to qualify for a people-to-people license. So once he kind of opened the door for this process, a lot of our members wanted to take customers to Cuba. Yet the process of getting the license was extraordinary. Even though they hired the best law firms, the best consultants who know how to deal with opening business in Cuba, they weren't having any success. So I went to Congressman Farr from California, got a meeting with him, shared with him the challenges our members were having in trying to get the people-to-people license. He said, Terry, give me the questions and the concerns, and I will send it to the body who issues the licenses. So I collect those questions. He sends them over to OFAC. Then he says, you know what, I'm going to take it one more step further. I'm going to invite them to come and sit in my office so I can look across my desk and make sure that I believe them, that they're not just giving me a line. So they set up a meeting in the congressman's office. A week before that meeting, they go to the congressman and say, we would like to know the business names from USTOA who are having these issues. So I'm never going to release my member's name without first getting their permission or consent. So we decided that the risk was worth taking by releasing your name. So we counseled our members, go ahead and release your name. We had 12 businesses who were caught up in this bureaucratic red tape. 8 of the 12 said, okay, you can release my name. OFAC went into the congressman's office, and the first thing they said, the 8 companies of USTOA have all been approved as of this morning for their people-to-people license. So when you ask, what do you do for your members? We do things that you can't necessarily do on your own. that as an industry body, we're much stronger, we have more access, hopefully more influence, and we can facilitate licensing or something of that nature that can be pretty darn hard on your own. Other question? Yes?
What you say was the indication at like each place that you were at, how did you know when you needed to move on, go to a different place?
How did I know when to move on? I wasn't ready to move on from New York City and Company, but when they called from the cruise industry, I thought, you know, I may not have this opportunity again in my career. So that one sought me out. Then when I got to the cruise industry, after almost 8 years, I felt beat up. And I decided that it was time for me to look for another opportunity because life is too short. And I wanted to look forward to going into the office every day as opposed to dread going into the office and wondering, what congressman am I going to be summoned to defend the industry that I represent, or what crisis has just unfolded? There are pirates attacking your ships off the coast of Somalia. I'm not a pirate fighter. I just wasn't cut out for that. So after 8 years, it was pretty apparent to me that I wanted to take a look for something else. And the Providence to New York, I thought I'd go there and spend 2 to 3 years, and I spent a decade. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to get stale. It's time for me to move on. And this is another, I think, message that I didn't give. I also think for the types of organizations that I have run, I think it's really important to get new leadership in there because I have certain skills and I can take an industry association to a certain level. And then somebody else with a different skill set can come along and help it grow in a new and different way. So I think it's as important for you as the leader, but also that association to allow new leadership to come in. So I had actually resigned from the job in Providence twice, and then finally on the third time when I said, look, it's a decade, I now have to move on. And they respected it, and I went to New York. So I think there's never going to be a clean, clear, this is the moment that I've got to transition. I think as long as you feel you're still challenged, you're still learning from the opportunity, you're still accomplishing the objectives that has been set forth for you, then those are all good things. But just be open to the idea of change because some good things can come from that. And you know what? Even if that change doesn't work out, that's all right. You tried it, and then you move on. Yeah?
Do you have a 5-year plan, and what if you do, what is that?
Me personally, do I have a 5-year plan? This is my 5-year plan. I'm kind of embarrassed to share this, but my 5-year plan is I will still be with USTOA, but I'm tired of New York City winters. So you can't share this with my board because we're negotiating this now for my next contract. But in 5 years, I'm going to split my time between Florida and New York City. There's no reason why I can't take January, February, March down in Florida. And look, I need a New York fix weekly. I'll come up. I'm never going to miss a meeting. But I want to have a better balance climate-wise. But I will be with USTOA if they want me, for the next 5 years. And then, I don't know. Yes?
In the position you're in the company, do you get to travel globally a lot, or are you pretty much
Yes.
in the United States?
Yes. Almost too much, if there is such a thing. So let's see, this year I have been to Cairo, India, Croatia, Germany. I said India. I've been invited to Iran. 2 weeks ago, I get this invitation from some entity in Iran saying, we want to start figuring out how to build tourism with our country. And can you be here in 2 weeks? And I'm just like, well, in 2 weeks I'm supposed to be in Israel, so that's not going to work. So I just got an email from them saying, well, how about February? So, and I should also couch all this by saying, I don't just accept an invitation and away I go. You know, it's important when you're working with a board of directors to make sure that they have buy-in, that they understand that if it's a trip to Israel, what's the purpose? What are the outcomes that we want to expect from that particular trip? And I should also mention that usually I will take 3 or 4 of our members with me. You know, that way they can talk directly as a government to a tour operator, because I'm not a tour operator. You could ask me questions about how the business is structured, and I'm not going to have the answer. I'm an association guy, not a tour operator. So I think it's important to take my members with me on a lot of these trips. But it's always with the blessing of the organization because it fits within the mission of our 5-year strategic plan. So I met last week with the Minister of Tourism from Myanmar, which was a great meeting. He came to me, fortunately. I didn't go, well, I shouldn't say fortunately. I will get to Myanmar. But those are very important meetings, and going to the countries is very important too, because what we'll do is we'll meet with the industry, we'll do interviews with the press so that we can talk about how to build business with the U.S. consumer. Yeah. It's real difficult. She's asking about how is it to maintain balance with a private life and your job. I guess it's all in what you become accustomed to as the norm. And my norm is living in a plane. And you know, my family still farms in Iowa today. My siblings all live within 6 miles of that family farm. I'll be with them tomorrow night for 4 days. As I said, I think it's incredibly important for me to maintain that physical connection with them. So if it means I have to do one more trip to make that connection, I'm going to do it. And then I get back, I'm in New York for 24 hours or so, and then I fly to Germany for 5 days. So it's hard, but I will tell you this. I am a firm believer in taking vacation. I am not one of those who's going to deny myself time off. So I, was in the Mediterranean for like 9 days, which it was Terrydale time. I always stay connected, read emails, respond, but I wasn't there for USTOA. And I have colleagues and I see people who, work constantly, and at the end of a year have never taken a vacation or have taken just, a small extended weekend. You know what? Life's too short. You got to take care of yourself, and I think the corporate culture, I could be way wrong on this, but is becoming more accepting and recognizing the value of you having downtime, because you're going to be more productive and more focused if you have time for yourself. So take it, use it. Anything else? If not, thank you so much. I enjoyed it.